You're listening to So You Want to Start a Business podcast, and I am your host, Ingrid Thompson. And today we have a fun conversation with Nicki Krawczyk. She is super smart and has created a business called Filthy Rich Writer, and she's here to tell us her business story and much more. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Thanks for being here, for spending your precious time with me and my guests. Thank you. My business is healthynumbers.com.au, and I am on a mission to help every business owner understand how money works in their business, because I believe everyone deserves to be financially savvy when it comes to understanding how money works in business. Business, and especially the financial side, has become so overcomplicated, and I aim to simplify it. In this podcast, we hear stories from business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders who think big and who take action to create their own business success. As we delve into their lessons learned, we offer easy business life hacks and debunk some of the common business myths, giving you tangible and tactical tools, tips, and tricks to revolutionize how you build your own business. As I said, I'm your host, Ingrid Thompson, and I help small business owners find lasting financial safety. Financial safety happens when you know how to increase your revenue and your profit. For the past 30 years, I've worked with thousands of business owners. I'm the author of the So You Want to Start a Business book, the only advertising on this podcast, along with my guests. Pretty much every day, someone somewhere in the world buys a copy of this book. This podcast is here to inspire, empower, and transform the way we build a business. There's more than 150 episodes. Cycle back through and listen to some of the terrific interviews. We hope you find it lively and thought-provoking. Today, I'm speaking with Nicki Krawczyk. When Nikki sent me her pitch to be on the show, I immediately knew she would be a terrific guest. I think you're going to find this a wonderful conversation. Let's listen now as Nikki tells us about getting started in her business. Hello, and here we are today with Nicki Krawczyk. Nikki, thanks so much for joining us from your part of the world.
Thanks so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So, Nikki, firstly, where in the world are you right now?
I'm just north of Boston in the States.
Oh, just north of Boston. So it's yesterday and it's today here in Sydney. So there we go. So, Nikki, let's jump right in. When it was proposed that you come on the podcast, I was just so taken with what you call the business, what you do in the world. So let's just start with, who are you and what is your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name, as you said, is Nicki Krawczyk, and I'm a copywriter. I've been a copywriter for more than 15 years, getting real close to 20. I've written for multi-billion-dollar businesses down to solopreneurs and just about every size business in between. And then about almost a decade ago now, I started a company to teach people to become professional copywriters. And that company is called Filthy Rich Writer. And I created the Comprehensive Copywriting Academy.
And I love what you've called this business, Filthy Rich Copywriter. So tell me tell all of us, what is behind that name? Because it says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's Filthy Rich Writer is definitely, I think, much more polarizing than I realized it would be when I chose it 10 years ago. It's some people really like it, and some people, the kinds of people who comment on Facebook and Instagram ads in the middle of the night really, really don't like it. But to me, being filthy rich means having a job you love, doing it well, and being paid well for what you do. And part of the reason that I wanted to call it Filthy Rich Writer is because I wanted to catch people's attention. And I wanted people to, because there's so many of us who grew up loving writing. We grew up thinking that you can't make any money as a writer, that if you can write, but you need a day job, or you can write, but you'll also have to do X, Y, Z, or you can write, but I hope you're comfortable being poor, And so what I really wanted to do was to catch people's attention with this concept of a filthy rich writer, and make people go, well, now wait a minute, what is this? Is this possible? And unfortunately, yes, there are a lot of areas, blogging, people who write blogs just write blogs, don't do courses in addition. Novelists, unless you're J.K. Rowling, even very sadly, journalists. There's not a lot of money to be made in those writing realms. But copywriting, which is a different form of writing, but still writing, is an area in which people who love to write and who are willing to hone their craft can make a really nice income.
Yeah, and doing something that they truly love. I think this is the other aspect of what I really liked about the work, I like about the work that you're doing is, I have so many clients who work in well-being, in fitness, and they care enormously about what they do. They care so much about the people that they work with and the impact they have on their lives. But there's this belief that you can't make money at it because there's all this stuff that goes on in people's heads. So I love that you're absolutely what's in the can is on the can. And I'm guessing that you've actually helped some people get filthy rich, whatever that means. I mean, it doesn't have to be obscenely badly behaved as as someone who has. It's about having that enough money that actually allows you to do what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the one writing field in which it is perfectly possible to make six figures annually as a copywriter, which is wonderful, especially for, as I was saying, those of us who thought, well, I want to write, but I don't, I still want to be able to put food on the table, that kind of thing. So to be, our students are shocked really to be able to use their writing skills and to feel fulfilled in what they do, but also to be respected for it, to be valued for it, and then to be paid well for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so let's get into some nitty-gritty of your business. You started 10 years ago. So you started it. You've kind of covered this, but you haven't really. Why did you want to start your own business? Like, why did you want to start this business helping other people to earn the money? Because it is something they can do. But what did you want from the business? Like, what was underneath all of that at the beginning?
Well, the first thing, I think this is probably the way a lot of businesses started. Just it started with an idea of, hey, this should be out there. Because the way it actually really started was I was working for a company as their copywriter, and they started a new website. And in order to make this new website work, there was going to be a ton of copy required. And so they basically came to me and said, okay, we need you to build a team of copywriters. And so I poached some people over from the editorial team and brought on a couple of kind of newbie, junior, green copywriters, and basically had to teach them all how to write copy. So every day we would come together, we would go through different principles, like I was saying, and as you know, copywriting, marketing, and advertising writing it's very different from any other type of writing. And so there are a lot of things to learn and a lot of skills to hone. And so every day we would get together and we would go through the principles and we would talk through examples. And so over the course of a month or two, I got them all ramped up and ready to start doing the work. And after that finished, I thought, you know what? I wish that something like this existed when I got into it. I'm fortunate in that I first learned about copywriting when I was in high school. My dad, who was a marketing director at the time, he's since retired, would bring home extra work for me to do, extra, copywriting, and he would give me feedback. So I kind of learned a lot of the fundamentals there, but there's so much about even more advanced techniques, and then building a business and building experience and finding clients and finding regular work that I didn't know when I got started. So after I finished teaching my team, I thought, I wish I had this when I was getting started. So that's what I put together. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that fantastic? And then you built that into a business. So one of my favorite questions in this series of questions is, when did it feel real? So when did it feel like you had a real business?
To the end of 2018. So I started it in 2012. Absolutely. And I will be the first person to tell you that, the whole time that I have been building this business, and probably what has helped me keep going through those initial 6 or so years, is that it really did have an impact on people, a demonstrable impact. Students would write in and say, this is amazing. I lost my job and I took your course and I now have a full-time role, at this agency. Or it's what started out as, well, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to create a training, ended up giving me this incredible opportunity to help be a part of people changing their lives, which is incredibly humbling, and such a gift to be given by our students. But for those first 6 or so years, I what I was teaching, I took seriously, but I didn't take the business seriously. It was kind of, I treated it much more as a hobby, and I didn't really dive into what it took to build a business. And it really wasn't until the end of 2018 that I got serious about what it would take to build a business, about even just, I remember, always trying out Facebook ads, right? Like we try out these techniques. And I remember, I'd $10 a day and I'm going, well, I'm putting in $10 a day. Why aren't people buying, and all this. And before you go in and you figure out exactly what your numbers, what your metrics have to be, which if you don't know, you need to know this before you invest. And really getting serious about it was, I will tell people, it was when I started to take my business seriously as a business that it truly became a business. And when I embraced the role of not just someone working on it, not just the employee, but the CEO who, cares about the business and puts the business's needs first. And I don't know about Facebook. I don't know if you can feel that as a person, but if you're the CEO and you're in charge of a business, you have to set aside your feelings and, I don't know, this seems a little bit confusing. Okay, great. Do it anyway. There is, when you embrace that CEO role, you in a way, you don't have the luxury of going, well, I don't feel like doing this, or I'm scared of doing this, so I'm not going to do this. You got to do it anyway.
Yeah, you've got to, and oh my gosh, there's so much that you've just talked about there. I think just to go back a tiny bit, I mean, there is always that moment, and I love this question because it's, there are people like you that I've interviewed or spoken to who've had numbers of years in business before it's actually felt real, for all those reasons that you just said. But it's so true, and I know so many people listening to this podcast are the sort of people who love to make an impact, and they really will resonate with what you said about how it's humbling, and it's just, sometimes you just think, wow, you get that random email or you bump into someone and they say, you said something 5 years ago, or you did something and you've changed my life. And we Nikki, and people listening, we often don't know the impact we have until much later, if ever. And it really is. And that's what I think stops us from being the CEO and taking it seriously, because there's a part of us that knows that we're doing this from a part of us that wants to help people and wants to make a difference. And so there's always this tension between, I've got to do my numbers, and I've got to get my metrics, and I've got to be brave, and I've got to put my big girl pants on and my big hat on, and I've got to, and it's all that. And at the same time is I have these people that the work I'm doing is making an impact for. So I think we've always got that tension. And I think the way you talked about it there is just beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who's done Facebook ad just resonates with the $5, $10 a day. It's like, what is that about? Like, is that just Zuckerberg's idea of, if the whole world just pays me $10 a day, that just keeps the money rolling in?
Exactly. And then I think back to those days and the amount that we actually spend a day now. It's like, whoa. But that's part of the growth as a business owner.
And so important. We'll get back to that in a moment about the numbers, but so important to track that, because if you're just splicking money out here and there, it's completely wasted, isn't it? Mm-hmm. All right. So you talked about customers. So in the early days, like you had this team that you were training, and then you started to teach other people. How did you get customers then, and how has that changed in the 10 years-ish that you've been in business?
Well, when I first started, I definitely did what I think a lot of us think we know better than to do, and yet we do it anyway. I kind of figured that if I just put this really great course together and put it out there, that people would just flock to it. They go, this, I need this. Yes, great, here, take my money. And shockingly, that is not how it happened. So it was definitely much more, it was very haphazard, and I tried a lot of different things. Like, you need to try a lot of different things. I tried to sell it as a membership for a while. I tried to sell it as piecemeal. You didn't buy the whole thing; you bought different parts, and it was when the same time when I started to get really serious about the business, thinking in terms of, okay, well, what do people need to know in order to make this purchase? How can I inspire them? How can I empower them? How can I deliver that information best? And then how can I nurture them along this journey so they get to the point where not only do they believe that we can teach them, but they also believe that they can learn it and it's possible for them to reach their goals. So, we developed a training video, and we developed an email sequence, and since then we also have our own podcast, which is wonderful, and various social media channels just to support all of those messages. Yeah.
It really, it's in 10 years, this has all changed so much, isn't it? It's that levels of awareness. I was having a conversation with someone recently who said, 7 touch points, but I think that's gone to something like 30 now, hasn't it? Like, people just need to know that, because even if they don't listen to every podcast or read every blog, people are looking at the entirety of your ecosystem, aren't they, to see where are you, what are you doing, and all of that kind of thing. So and they have a lot of choice. Customers now have a lot of choice. So it's, how do we find that individual thing that makes us who we are as a business owner, that makes our people want to come and work with us? Okay, so let's talk about money, because that's one of my favorite subjects. Writing and money go so well. I write about money and talk about money, and you teach people how to do that, and across a number of different topics, I'm guessing. So how did you kind of get to the numbers and the charging? And you don't have to talk about what you actually do. Actually, you could also tell us where people can find you, because I'll be putting that in the notes, but this might be a good point to say, what those courses are. Just really quickly tell us where your website is, and where your favorite place to hang out is. You've got your podcast, mention that. But how did you know how much to charge? And, how does someone get to 6 figures? People go the 6 figures, that's what people aim for. Talk to us a little bit about pricing and your idea about money. Please.
Yeah, you mean pricing for the course and for
the course and for your business, and then how you like, because in the early days you were working for someone else, and then you had to go out and say to people, this is how much it's going to be to do this with me. How do you get to a place where it's really comfortable to say this is how much it is?
I don't know that it ever. So on the freelancing side, I will tell you, as a freelancer, there's no magic. Our students, bless them, will always say, okay, well, but like, how do I exactly know the exact right number to charge? And I say, what I'm going to say to you, but there is no exact way to know the perfect number that is going to be the right number for you. But, with our students, we talk about, we take them through exactly how to figure out what your hourly rate is, and then how to figure out a project rate based on how long it's going to take you to do an initial call, how long it's going to take you to do the work, and then edit the work, and then do the revisions, because there should be revisions. Copywriting is a very collaborative process, and how to make sure that is a rate that makes sense for you, and then how to present it to your client. So I wish that there was just a magic calculator, but there is not for freelancing. And then for the course side, I spent a lot of years trying a lot of different things. And I don't know that there is, I think one day you just have to go, okay, this is the price. And whatever you price it at is going to be so much less than it's worth. That when it always is. Otherwise, why would people buy it? Not why would people buy it, but it needs to be, it needs to be a deal, right? People need to go, oh, wow, not only is this amazing, but at that price, it just makes it more compelling. And especially, quite frankly, when you're talking about a course that can make you, if you, I mean, if you don't want to make six figures, fine. But if that is your goal, great. Everybody has different, but like, it could make you six figures over the course of however long you want to work. If you want to work 20, 25 years. So we're looking at a course that could make you 2 million, 2.5, however. So to actually price that is incredibly difficult. And I think, quite frankly, at a certain point, you just kind of go, yep, you know what? That's the number. That feels good to me. If that is a number that I know my audience is in a good spot for my audience, that the core of my audience can afford. It might be a little bit of a stretch for some of them. Some of them will see it and go, whoa, what a deal. But it should be right in the middle of what your core audience is roughly comfortable with spending, or they can at least acclimate themselves to the idea of spending that amount. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you teach in the course how to get that pricing right, because, just because it's going to take an hour and a half to write this paragraph or 2 paragraphs or however long it takes, like you said, there's all that other stuff, all that other time that is spent. And so, sometimes a client can look at it and say, I'm going to pay that for a page. But it's not just the page, it's your years of experience, it's the toing and froing, it's the putting it together, it's the having it correct, it's all of that together. So I love that you teach that to your students. And what is your website, Nikki? Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, that's right. Well, I was going to say because it's not just those elements, it is all the other points that go into it. But one of the reasons that copywriters are paid well is because companies and organizations can directly connect the work that copywriters do with their business, changes in their business. A copywriter writes, for example, a really great email campaign. The company can directly tie that back to increase sales or increased engagement or whatever. Copywriting is about connecting a target audience or connecting people who have a want or a need with a company or an organization that has the solution to that want or that need, and connecting them by using language that is evocative and that connects with, or I should say, makes sense to that target audience and makes them go, oh yes, this is it. This is what I want. And so because it can be tied back to a company's goals, a company is willing to pay a skilled copywriter an excellent a rate commensurate with the work that we do, with the quality of work that we do and the results that we have.
And that is so important, that idea of tying what we do back to results. I spent many years in the corporate world working in the training and development department, and that was always our struggle, is how does this training that we're doing tie back to the bottom line? Because at the end of the day, the accountants are the ones making the decision whether it's viable for people to take a day out to do training or to take 6 weeks to do the training. What is the benefit to us? And often it's not directly attributable, in terms of client retention, in terms of customer service. But now we have so much better measurements than we had 20, 30 years ago when I was doing that. And that, the customer value, the customer retention is so much more easy to track. And those click-throughs and the purchase and tracking what happens after somebody reads something and they click this and then where do they go? We're tracked every nanosecond of what we do. So yeah, that's beautiful that you do that. All right, so let's have a reflective question. If you had a magic wand and you could go back maybe to 2018, 2015, 2012, to some of those early days, and change something or do something differently, what might you have done differently? And it's easy to say, but, we all and we learn from the mistakes. So totally respecting that, nothing's a bad decision because we learn from it. But, if there's something, because the people listening are looking for this, it's like, what could they not do or what could they do that would make a difference in their business right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say I almost said, I don't know that I would change anything, because there was a lot of learning and a lot of even just growing as a copywriter that informed what I was able to teach. But, what would have made a difference is bringing on help sooner. And I have to say that I know that every business owner does this. And quite frankly, I do this before we bring on any contractor or employee. And, we have a whole team now, but it's every single one. I go, oh, we need this role, but you know what? I'm going to wait until I'm making more money in order to pay for this role. And that's not how it works. You bring on the person so that to take that stuff off of your plate so that you can go and make more money for your business. And it sounds crazy and counterintuitive. And believe me, I go through the same thing every time. Every time we have to hire someone, I go, well, let's just wait a little bit and let's make a little bit. But we always need that person in place in order to make more money and take us to the next level. And I spent a lot of time. The first person I brought on was someone to help me with customer service because it was a slog. There were fantastic people, but it was a lot of the same questions again and again. And just working on the business and then also doing the customer service was just, it was weighing me down. And I thought, oh, fine. I'll just bring someone on part-time and it was wonderful. Once you finally get the stuff, we as business owners, we're like, well, I have to do it all. And even now, I have a team we have 4 on staff, 2, 3 contractors, and a variety of different coaches. So the team is much bigger than it has been, but I still struggle with, well, I have to do this. No, you don't. Why would you be doing this? Give it to someone else. It's taking that. If I had gotten that help sooner, if I'd hired that help sooner, there's a good chance I probably would have grown sooner. At the very least, I would have been happier because I wouldn't have been dealing with the stuff that I didn't want to deal with. Which is not to say that you should immediately go to hiring. If you start doing Facebook ads and you go, I don't like this, I don't understand it, I'm just going to hire it away. Not necessarily the way to do it. No, you should at least understand what you're in fact hiring away, because otherwise it's really easy to spend a lot of money on paying someone else to do something that you don't want to do. But when you are identifying the things that you go through in your day and you're thinking, you know what, this thing, out of all the other things, this is the one that makes me crazy. When I see it on my to-do list, I think, oh, I can't. Hire somebody to do that for you. It will save you time. Yes, of course. But the mental load that it takes off of you is priceless, both in terms of your well-being and in terms of you then being able to create new things and come up with new ideas.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that, Nikki, because it really is describing sort of the bandwidth that all that takes out of your brain, that you even just seeing it on your to-do list has just shifted the energy. And look at you.
Yes.
This is, if you can see Nikki, she's doing that.
Yes.
But it truly is, and when our bandwidth is always eroded. Like being in business is resilience and courage and tenacity and bounce back ability and all of those things you need in bucket loads. And if you're already doing stuff that you don't like doing, or that you're not gifted in doing, or that isn't your skill set. And the other thing I think about outsourcing or having somebody else pick up the jobs that aren't your best is that they can do it faster and better. I think bookkeeping, accounting, like you said, the Facebook ads and copywriting itself, if that's not your skill set, then find someone who is very good at it and work with them so that they get the sound of your voice and all of those things. Yeah, totally. All right. So has it been tough? Because you've made it sound like it's been a pretty nice road here, Nikki.
Oh, it's been so easy. Business is fabulously simple. No, it's so funny because we follow so many business owners and, on Instagram or whatever, and we listen to their stories but it's so much more of a roller coaster. Even when things are going great, there's still such an emotional roller coaster. Our business is great. We are thriving and continue to thrive, and we have big plans for growth. And you know what? As exciting as that is, it is terrifying some days. And some days I change from being excited to being terrified on like an hourly basis. And the very fun thing about being a business business owner, especially when you have people underneath you, is that it's not like you can pull aside an employee and go, isn't this frightening? And even you can thank goodness for other business owning friends, but your people, even your best friends who are employees at jobs, they don't understand how it is simultaneously thrilling and empowering and fulfilling, and also just panic inducing sometimes to be the one who is solely in charge of your income and then eventually the income of other people. It is terrifying sometimes, but at the same time, that being in charge and that thrill and I've heard somebody, I can't remember who it was, I wish I did, but somebody said that you will never experience the kind of growth as a human that you experience, except for having children, maybe, being an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone. And you have to do it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And when you look back, you're like, wow, look at what I've become, which is
where we've
wonderful.
come.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is scary to get there a lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that? Like you mentioned there, having other business owners to talk to, and but how do you deal with those scary times, when you just wish you had someone to turn around and say, isn't this scary? But yeah, what do you do, Nikki? How do you handle it?
No, it's, I don't know that there is like a good coping mechanism, because it just, by its nature, entrepreneurship is scary sometimes. I think that going to bed early, there's some days where you just go, I have to go to bed. I need to hit a reset on this. I need to go to bed. Talking to people. I personally like to take a little retreat weekend just by myself every 6 months or so. No TV, go just to, a hotel, someplace I've never been before, and just hole up and just read and kind of reconnect with myself and reconnect with how far I've come and the what our students have been able to do. That's an important thing too, is to really keep an eye when your students or when you get great feedback, or when your students share their wins. Now we compile those and we have them on a testimonial page, which is amazing. But even to go back and go, I was a part of helping to make this happen. Like it is, in a way, it's almost selfish to give into that fear, because people need what you have to offer. And so if you don't put it out there and you don't do your best to put it out there, people won't experience that change. They won't get, if you don't figure out how to get it out there and get it in front of them and explain to them why this is the right solution for them, then they won't experience that change. They won't get what they want. Yeah.
And they won't get it from you, which is even more important. I love what you said about resetting and going to bed early. I'm an early to bed person, because sleep is, and we know so much more about sleep and how important sleep is now in terms of the brain, cleaning itself out and doing stuff. I've just had a couple of weeks away, and it ended up being a little bit more, I knew it was going to be unplugged, but it became a little more unplugged than I imagined, because one was where we were had very little internet. So you kind of on one elbow with your toe in the air trying to connect to the internet. But my phone got wet, and so it meant no phone, but we all had no internet, but no torch, no camera, no recorded music, no recorded podcasts, no nothing. So I actually had 8 days, because we couldn't do anything about it till we got back. And then I still had to find somebody to do something with it. So I've had nearly 2 weeks without a phone, I have a Mac, but I didn't. So it's actually really interesting what happens when you are really unplugged, and how it just gives you that chance to take a step about, okay, so this is how we used to live. I was meeting somebody and I was running early, and I was going to text them and say, do you want to come meet me earlier? And I couldn't, because, I just didn't have the facility. So there's something quite delicious about that idea of resetting and unplugging. And, it's hard to do because we're so plugged all the time. So to even take that weekend away to somewhere you haven't been before, it's so important to do that. And I love what you said about being responsible for other people, and whether those other people are the people in your team or the people in your, your community, your customers, your clients. And then you see, I think what's so important for your business is that you work with the copywriters who then work with businesses and improve their businesses. So your ripple effect of the impact you have just spreads out into the world, and who knows where. Who knows what business one of your students changes forever because of the writing they do. I think the impact that you have is big in the world. Mm-hmm. Nikki, have you ever had a coach, a mentor? How do you get feedback? Who kind of keeps you on track?
Oh yeah, you have to have a coach or mentor. I think that's another thing that when you first start out as a lot of people make that mistake when you first start as an entrepreneur. You're like, all right, I'm going to figure it all out, and I don't need a coach. I'm just going to take this course, or I don't need a coach. I'm just going to, and yes, you must invest in courses. You must learn, you must practice, but to actually work with a coach that you can check in with, that you can bounce, and someone who understands what you do and who is at least a few, if not several steps ahead of you. I remember working with a coach in maybe end of 2018, beginning of 2019, just when we were really starting to ramp up. Between the end of 2018 and the end of 2020, we 40x'd our business, 40x'd our business. Yeah. Mm. So as you can imagine, with that kind of growth, you 40x the excitement and you 40x the terror. I spent like $700 to get on an hour-long phone call with a coach, basically just to ask, is it possible to build this business in this way? And she went, well, yeah, it is. And I went, oh, thank you. Just because sometimes you just need someone who knows a little bit more to answer your questions, or to guide you, or to give you ideas, or even just to say, yeah, you can do this. Because nobody, I was talking to my mom maybe last year at some point, and she said, I'm so glad that your business is doing so well. Isn't this wonderful? Isn't it amazing? I remember when you started doing it, your dad and I kind of thought, well, I don't know how many people want to learn copywriting. And, I can say at this point, more than 5,000. We've had more than 5,000 students over the course of this last 10 years. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They're fantastic people who have built amazing careers, full-time, part-time, whatever.
And the ripple effect that's had out into the world, Nikki, is just
it's amazing.
Like when I think about that for anybody's business, is that, you teach this person, and then they have their family, and then they have their clients, and then they have their clients. And then you just think, where does this touch? Those 5,000 becomes an unimaginable number. Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But your mum will always believe in you, even if
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's the best thing is that when she doubted, she didn't say anything. Because that's the problem, is that, the people who love us want us to be happy, and they want to keep us safe. And unfortunately, that means that they will offer up opinions on things that they probably don't know anything about. I bless my mother, but she has never built, she actually was, I think I had didn't have a fear of freelancing, because she was actually a freelance interior designer for a lot of years while I was growing up. But she had never built a business larger than one person. And, it was a different type of business.
Different type, and so different time and everything.
Exactly. And I think that one of so thank goodness she didn't say anything, because it's so easy to get swayed by people who don't necessarily know what they're talking about. And I say this with a lot of love, but you need to be taking advice from people who have been successful at what you want to do. Our single friends love to give tons of advice about our marriages. Well, not my marriage, but you know what I mean? I'm not married, so that's a little bit different, but don't take advice for your marriage from your perpetually single friend. Don't take advice about losing weight from your Uncle Phil, who's only put on 50 pounds and sits on the sofa. But they will give you plenty of advice. They will offer it up. And you have to be really discerning about what you listen to and what you go, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Uncle Phil.
Exactly. Thanks, Uncle
And
Phil.
apologies
Duly
to any
noted.
Uncle Phils listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Duly noted, Uncle Phil. Thanks.
Yeah.
But, and it's sometimes, one of my favorite stories, our students, and we did this podcast episode a little while ago, but Adele, who's actually one of our coaches now, when she first got started with it, her partner, her boyfriend said, okay, all right, well, come back to me in 6 weeks when you finally realize that this is a scam or something along those lines. And, I think he said it in a much, much nicer way, but essentially he was like, this is a scam. This is going to be a scam. And she posted in our student only Facebook group, a few months later that she said, today is an amazing day. I got a gift from my partner, Jake. He bought me a new laptop to celebrate how well I have been doing and how proud he is of me and how much I thrive. So, sometimes the people who love us the most will try to keep us in our safe little spots, but we can prove to them that it's possible, that it's doable,
And they just want to protect us, or they don't want to see us, like you see a child running towards a swing and it's going to hit them and you don't want it to, or,
Exactly.
like we have this protective mechanism in us just by nature. And so if we think something's a scam or we think someone's going to fall on their face, we just don't want to allow that to happen.
Well, and that's the thing, is that we want to keep people safe even when we don't really know what we're talking about, right?
That's right. Like we don't know
my
what we're
mother
about.
didn't know anything about selling courses online, and Adele's partner Jake didn't know anything about copywriting, but they want us to be safe.
Yeah.
But they just don't know.
They don't know. And so that's why a coach, a mentor, it's so important. Somebody who's done, and I think what you said there is so important. It's someone who's doing what you want to do successfully. Because they clearly have been through some of the ropes. And I think you're right. We need to learn some of the lessons ourselves. And the whole idea of getting into business is to be independent and to, take our own path and to do those things. But there are certain things that work. And if you follow those, like tracking your numbers, just on that, what are your favorite numbers to track? Like what metrics do you love to track when you're looking at your analysis?
We track a lot of numbers, but ones that I keep a closer eye on are courses sold per day, and also our percentage of conversions per email subscribers per month. Those are two of the ones that I really keep a closer eye on. Lots of other numbers and then of course expenses and all of that kind of thing. But those are two of my favorites to keep a really close eye on.
Because it's, each business has its own metric that is important to that business and to that business owner. And that idea of conversion is such an important one. And how many sales you're actually making, where's the money coming in? Like, is the money coming in? Because the money's going out and it's got to come in.
Oh, is it going out? That's another exciting thing. How the expenses really mount up, but
and they do, and they can get carried. But we never build a business through cutting expenses. We build a business through increasing revenue. So actually, I'll just tell you this example that I've just come across because you might be interested. Did you ever read books by an author called Enid Blyton as a young child? She was English. She wrote Fabulous 5 and Noddy and The Secret 7. She was a children's author, incredibly popular in Britain and in other parts of the Commonwealth. I don't know how well. I think Noddy eventually was bought by Walt Disney to make, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure. But I just read her biography, and she'd been making a lot of money, and she came to a point in her life where she faced an enormous tax bill because she hadn't actually been reporting her income correctly. And in Britain, the way that they did it was it's sort of like a self-disclosure. And somebody then said, well, she's so popular. Every child I know surely she's making more money than what it says here. And so they did a big investigation. She had this enormous tax bill. And, she had assets. She had a house. She had another house. Her husband had a golf course. So, the first instinct for people is often to shut down expenses, to get rid of staff, to, sell off assets to pay the bill. She didn't do that. She went out and created Noddy which is the little character. It's actually a bit politically incorrect. They've had to change some of the character kind of personalize it. But in the 50s, in the 40s, it was perfectly how we were, which then went on to be her biggest selling character and series of books ever. So instead of facing, and this, but for me, it's such a great business example. You know, it's a beautiful writing example as well. And as you said, copywriting is different to books, but this was children's books, and
Still
she
writing.
knew children. She knew children. Her 3, 4, 5, up to 10-year-olds. Just, you know, there wasn't a child in that generation who didn't know Enid Blyton and who didn't grow up with them. And, you know, I think it's such a beautiful example of when you're facing a financial difficulty, you don't hunker in and shrink. You actually go out and you look for a new way to make more money. You know, like when you lose a client, you don't just sack team members. You go, okay, I've got this team. Let's go get some more clients. Let's go out and create something new. And, you know, I just think it's such an important aspect of business that, you know, like you said, you track those numbers and your expenses. And yes, you have to watch them, but you never grow a business by shrinking numbers, shrinking expenses. Yeah. And like you said, hire someone to do stuff before you're making the money. You know, it's that whole idea of you need to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, going into last year with COVID, and, you know, it was always kind of, is it a recession? Is it not a recession? You know, our students going into it were panicked. And, you know, I said, look, I have been through a recession in 2008. There was quite a recession. And as a copywriter, that was the first time that I hit 6 figures. And it was after I left a full-time job to go full-time freelance. And I said, what you don't understand, because you're relatively new to having your own business, is that when times get hard, when COVID hits, and when pandemics, although please let us be done with those for a little while. But when recessions, when the economics of the world is crazy, businesses get hyper focused on making money, on continuing to run. And you don't have the luxury, like you were saying, you don't have the luxury of going, you're putting your head under the covers. Businesses must get hyper focused on selling. And the wonderful thing is, as copywriters, and I do not at all mean to devalue people who struggled in last year and ever. And I really, truly feel for them. But for our particular industry, for copywriters, because when a business is hyper-focused on selling, they also need to be hyper-focused on their messaging, which means that they need skilled copywriters. They may have very, very unfortunately have let go, entire arms of companies. Content writers, unfortunately, went, but companies were bringing in copywriters because they needed that help to create great messaging. And to your earlier point, because the copywriters were skilled and they knew what they were doing, they helped these companies stay afloat through 2020 and beyond, and which helped those companies still employ the people that they employed. It's I think a lot of freelancers especially are worried about the idea of like, I don't want to have to beg for work. You are never begging for work. What you do is very valuable, and you help a business or an organization or a nonprofit. You help them attain their goals, and that is very valuable. And as you were saying, that ripple effect, it goes out into the world. We had students last year that were like, all right, this is scary, but I'm going to do it, and ended up surpassing any income they'd ever had before. It was amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. Nikki, you and I could talk, I think, forever, but we do need to bring this to a close. And I think our listeners are just filled with ideas and inspiration, I'm sure, from this. So parting words, anything you'd like to add? Because we know the audience of this podcast is about half in America and 76 countries around the world, and they're either in the early stages of being in business or looking at getting started. You've given us lots of your wisdom, but what's your parting something that you'd like to leave us with as we
Yes,
close
absolutely.
the conversation.
And you asked me earlier, and I skipped right over it, but before I forget, you can find us at filthyrichwriter.com and on Instagram. And if you are listening and you think, oh, maybe I want to be a copywriter, go to freecopywritingtraining.com. We have a fantastic video. But the important information, I think probably the most overlooked and quite possibly the most significant quote unquote secret to success is sticking with it through the scary times, through the slow times, if you stick with it and if you need to, maybe you change your tactics a little bit, but sticking with it is where the success comes from. I think if you ask any successful business owner, what is the key? It was just to keep doing it. And yes, to refine here and there and try new things, but fundamentally, don't this business, then this business. It's to find your thing and keep doing it, even when it's scary, even when it's slow, even when it's fantastic, even when it challenges you. Stick with it.
Stick with it. I love that. That is just the most beautiful place to leave this conversation. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being with us. filthyrichwriter.com. Fabulous name, and I love your definition of filthy rich, but sticking with it is what gets you to where you want to go. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So much fabulous information and wisdom in this conversation with Nikki. As she says, stick with it. And this is the secret to success. Find your thing and keep doing it, even when it's scary, even when it's slow. Just stick with it. What is your key message from this conversation? Of course, I always love to ask, what action are you inspired to take today? Please share this episode with friends or colleagues. Yes, Nikki's business is about teaching people copywriting, and I always encourage you to look at every business model for inspiration and ideas for your own business, even the smallest tweak as a result of listening to Nikki's experiences. When we pursue business and entrepreneurship based on core values and deepest integrity, and at the same time build a financially successful business, we can live richer, fuller lives. Till the next time, thanks for listening.